Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
I'm reading from Saranagati, Bhakti Thakur's prayers of surrender. This is, today I'll read the first of several songs which describe giving up everything which is against the spirit of devotion to Krishna. Prtikula varjanangikara, the decision, the firm decision to give up everything which is unfavorable for devotional service. Kesava, tuwa, jagat, vicitra. He says, my dear Krishna, your universe, your creation is amazing, wonderful. So actually that's the fact. Our modern civilization is a very stereotyped way of life. Wherever you go, there are simply big buildings and cars going here and there. But actually, in the whole universe, there are so many wonderful things. What to speak, even on this planet, there are so many amazing things. That's why people, they like to travel, to experience all kinds of different things. But what to speak of on this Earth planet, there are other planets also. There are many different planets which have different features. Asudhadi vibhuti dinna, this is described in Brahma Samhita. That there are many different planets and they all have their own different characteristics. Yasya prabha bhagavato jagadanda koti kotishva shesha asudhadi vibhuti dinna. Described that not only this universe, there are many, many different universes. And within each universe there are many different planets. And every planet has its own specific feature. From the Vedic literatures we understand the features of some of these planets. For instance, there's the Siddha Loka, where everyone is born with mystic powers. Here in Russia we find many people are interested in mystic powers, third eye, extra sense and all these things. They think this is something very wonderful. But the inhabitants of Siddha Loka, they are born with all mystic powers. They can fly through the sky without any airplanes. And there are other planets, Gandharva Loka, the inhabitants are called Gandharvas. The Gandharvas, they are all expert in music. Maybe you've heard the name of John Lennon. Famous in Russia also. Yeah, one time, I think it was John Lennon, he said that now we are more famous than Jesus. Then after that, in a short time, they were finished. They became too proud and made an offense. Anyway, Prabhupada said about John Lennon, I think it was either John Lennon or George Harrison, he said he was Gandharva in his previous life. So someone who's born with musical skill, just naturally, we can understand that most likely they were Gandharva in their previous life. You know this Mozart. Of course, there are so many famous composers. I'm just giving an example of Mozart. So just from a very young age, from about the age of 5, he was composing music. And he used to describe that he didn't actually think of composing music. It would just all come automatically in his head. And his main problem was to write it all down quickly enough. So much musical inspiration would come. Because his previous life must have been Gandharva. So there are so many different planets. At the top of the universe are the planets where the great sages live. Maharaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. These are different planetary systems. Within these planetary systems there are many different planets. And in these planets at the top of the universe, great sages live. And they are simply preparing themselves for liberation. Then beneath that are the heavenly planets. Mostly people who are religious in this world, they're mostly interested in going to heaven. Now, what is understood as the kingdom of heaven and what is understood as the kingdom of God, these are two different things. The kingdom of God is beyond this material world, and the heavenly planets are within this material world. Heavenly planets, they are places where people can enjoy sense gratification to a great extent. There are 3 areas of heavenly planets within this universe. What is generally known as Swargaloka, that is an area above this planetary system, where the demigods live. And they enjoy all kinds of facilities for sense gratification. They all have very beautiful, healthy bodies. They don't have to go to the beauty parlor to get their hair curled up like this. Or they don't have to go to the gymnasium to do press-ups. The men are very strong and the women are very beautiful. And they don't have to use smelly soaps to make them smell nice, because the women, especially, their bodies emanate very nice smell, natural perfume. And they live in nice palaces with gardens. There are rivers of nectar which they drink nectar. They enjoy so many facilities for sense gratification. Then there is Bilvaswarga, which means below this planetary system there are also heavenly planets. These are inhabited by demoniac people who have nevertheless performed some pious activities and who have the opportunity to enjoy sense gratification. And on this earth planet also there are places which are considered heavenly. That's called Bhaumaswarga. Previously Kashmir was considered to be like that. I think Kashmir now may not be so pleasant. Now people are thinking California is like heaven. Let's go to America, they're thinking. Anyway, there are so many different places within the universe. There are 7 planetary systems up and 7 down. Tala, Sutala, Tala, Atala, Sutala, Vitala, Tala, Atala, Patala. There's different planetary systems going down where the demoniac people live. There are planets of the snakes, hellish planets. So all these things, a lot of variety. One interesting thing to note is that knowledge of these planetary systems is given in the Vedic literature. Now, modern science claims to have discovered all these planets, but knowledge of all these planets is given in the Vedic literature. Just like using modern scientific calculations, you can calculate what time the sun will rise in a certain place on a certain day. But you can also do the same using Vedic astronomical science. And all the knowledge of the planets is given there. Plus there are some planets described in the Vedic literatures which have not been discovered yet by our modern scientists. They are dark planets which don't reflect the light of the sun, therefore they cannot be seen. They absorb the light of the sun rather than reflect it. So especially Rahu and Ketu are there. So anyway, this tuwa, jagat, vicitra. There's so much variety in this material world. However, despite all this variety, there is no happiness. The material energy offers all kinds of different situations. And we are thinking we can enjoy in different situations. But actually we are suffering. Sometimes we're born as a snake, sometimes we're born as a demigod, sometimes we're born as a demon. But anyway we're not happy. This Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing. Karama vipake bhava bandha brahmi dekinu runga bahu chitra. He says, as a result of my fruitive activities, I'm wandering in the jungle of this material world. Karama vipake, that means we perform some activity, and after some time the result of that activity becomes mature. We may think I can do whatever I like, no one can stop me, but the laws of nature, they are fixed and very strict. The laws of nature are insurmountable. So if we do something, the result may come later, but it will come. And as the result of activities, we are simply wandering in the jungle of this material world. If you ever wander if you go in a jungle area, it's a little frightening. Of course, maybe not so much here. Of course, in the forests in Russia, they must have wolves also, is it? Yeah, wolves. It's a little dangerous. But in the tropical forest, if you wander, you'll hear so many different birds and animals making noises. You may walk around the corner and see a snake hanging out of a tree looking right in your face. I've had this experience. Yes, I'm not just talking. Just walking along and all of a sudden there's a snake in my face. Fortunately, he was as surprised as I was and he ran away. You don't know, then there are tigers and lions and elephants and scorpions and so many different... Even some of the plants are very poisonous. So on the whole, it's a frightening place to be in. So this material world is compared to a jungle in which we are wandering. We don't know why we are wandering or where we are going. Simply there are dangers on all sides. And wandering in that jungle we see many unusual things. So this is material life. Wandering in the jungle of this material world. Tuwa padda vishmiti a mara jamprana klesha dahane davijai. It says that because of forgetting your lotus feet, then I'm getting so many jamprana, means pain, difficulties. In other words, klesh. There's so many words. Kashta, klesh, jamprana, vekta. There's so many words for pain, or difficulties, shamasha, so many different words. Expressing the difficulties of material life. Klesha dahane rahijai. So I'm burning in the fire of material miseries. In the jungle also sometimes there's a fire. When it becomes very hot for many days, then suddenly, automatically, without anyone lighting the fire, just by the wind blowing, the trees rub against each other, fire comes. And that fire, when it starts, it will just spread very quickly. So whoever is caught in that fire, they will be burned. So that is the nature of material life. We're all burning in the fire of material life. There's another kind of fire. It's called tushano, means very slow fire. And tusha means the husk of the rice paddy. So if you make a fire from that, it burns very, very, very slowly. So to die by being burned by this is very slow and painful. So we're all dying in this, we're all being tormented by the fire of material life. Another kind of fire, the forest fire. Suddenly there's a big fire. Like sometimes there's a war in which all of a sudden people's consciousness becomes changed. And even ordinarily peaceful people, they just want to kill the enemy. They don't think why. They just become overtaken by a kind of madness. There are many stories like this. There's one story from Lahore, which is now in Pakistan. At the time when India was divided into India and Pakistan, so the city of Lahore was about 50% Muslim, 50% Hindu. So at that time they wanted to throw all the Hindus out. So anyway, there was one Hindu, he owned a tea shop. And he had many customers, both Hindus and Muslims. So he had one customer who was a Muslim. And for the last 20 years, he used to come every morning to his shop, going on the way to work. He used to take one cup of tea and then go to work. So anyway, these Hindu-Muslim riots began. So one morning, this Muslim man came, as he came every morning. So the shop owner saw him coming and automatically he just picked up one cup and started pouring the tea. The same thing he'd done for the last 20 years. However, on that morning, his customer came up to him and shot him dead. Because overcome by madness, the blazing fire of material existence. Sometimes there's just like a forest fire, spreads very quickly and everyone becomes very excited. So in the same way in a war, people, they don't think why they're doing what they're doing. They simply go, they play the music, boom, 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 boom. Everyone goes and gets shot. So this is blazing fire of material existence. People are throwing themselves in the fire. They don't think what is proper, what should be done, what should not be done. So this is the situation in the material world. Because why? Tuwa padda vismriti. Because people are forgetting Krishna. The cause of our material existence is forgetfulness of Krishna. Now, human beings, they are intelligent. At least they have more intelligence than the animal. So in human society there have been developed many different philosophies. Because human beings, they feel the need to substantiate what they're doing. So here, Bhakti Thakur is mentioning some of these philosophers. Kapil, Patanjali, Gautam, Kanabhoji, Jaimini, Bho, Daoi, Dhai. All these different philosophers are coming running to me. Because a human being, he naturally thinks, why? What is the meaning of life? Everyone has to have some, that's called raison d'etre, it's a French expression which is used in English. Raison d'etre means an intrinsic reason for the living their lives. So different philosophers have given different ideas. Here some of the names of prominent philosophers have been mentioned. First one is mentioned Kapil. Now, Kapil Muni is personality of Godhead, incarnation. He taught Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy means to analyze this material world to understand its relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is Devahuti Putra Kapila, the son of Devahuti, the Personality of Godhead. But there is another Kapila who's called Nirishvavadi Kapila. Kapila who doesn't believe in God, who taught a Sankhya philosophy with an atheistic conclusion. Sankhya literally means counting. So the Sankhya philosophers, they count what are the different elements. And different Sankhya philosophers give different numbers, how many elements there are. 23, 24, 25, they give different numbers. There are the 8 basic elements, the working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, the objects of the senses. This comes to 23.
8 men.
8, there are 8 basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence.
Есть 8 основных.
Then there are the knowledge acquiring senses: sense of smell, rasa, gandha, sparsha, gandha. What is that? Sense of taste, smell, touch, hearing. Taste, smell, touch, hearing, and smelling. Then there are 5 working senses. That means the legs for walking, the hands, the tongue. Here the tongue the tongue for speaking, the rectum and the genital. Then there are the objects of the senses. the object of sight, which is form, the object of taste, which is food. So in relation to all the senses, there are 5. So this comes to 23, and different Sankhya philosophers, some leave it at 23, others add contaminated consciousness as another element. Others add the soul as another element, and others add the super soul as another element. But anyway, the followers of Nirishvavadi Kapila, they are atheists. Their ultimate conclusion is that there's no God in control. This Kapila's Sankhya philosophy, Nirishvavadi Kapila, this is similar to modern science, in which they analyze the material world and the energies in the material world. But their ultimate conclusion is atheistic. They don't see the position of God in this world. Even though some scientists may be, in their personal lives, they may be theists also. But science as a discipline in the Western world has been developed to not include, even on a hypothetical level, consideration of the existence of God. Another atheistic philosopher is Patanjali, who is teaching yoga. Yoga has become very popular in the modern world. Yoga to improve your health. Sometimes you see some book, Yoga for Sex. Yoga is meant for sense control. Indriya samyamya. Yoga means to control the senses. But they have misinterpreted it. Yoga is supposed to make the body very peaceful and the life airs within the body very peaceful, so that we can begin meditation. But they have taken yoga simply make the body healthy for sensuality. But anyway, Patanjali in his meditation system, his ultimate idea is impersonal. Although in the yoga system it is recommended that one should meditate on the form of Vishnu, but they don't accept that the ultimate goal is to surrender to Vishnu. They accept an impersonal reality which is manifested through Vishnu. So they're also not devotees. Then Gautam Kanabhoji. This means Kanabhoji means Kana. Kanabhoji is usually Bhoji means just like a cheetah. So these two, they were both teaching Nyaya philosophy. Nyaya means logic. So this is a very elaborate system of philosophy which analyzes thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Then the synthesis becomes a new thesis. Then you bring another antithesis, and then you bring a new synthesis. So they have perfected the art of argument. If someone says this, you should say this. If someone says this, you should find out that this is the weak point in their argument. Then you should say this. So their philosophy is almost like a legal system. Legal, just like in the law court, the people are arguing. So very expert in argument. But their ultimate conclusion is also Nirishva, no God. By all their logic, they come to the conclusion that the ultimate cause of creation is simply atomic interaction. The ultimate cause of everything is simply atoms. Where the atoms came from, why they interact with each other, that far their logic cannot go. Which proves the maxim that logic is not sufficient to understand God. God means He is beyond this material world. He is called Turiya. He is beyond ordinary states of consciousness. There are different stages of consciousness. Susupti, Swapna, Jagata. Jagata means awake. Swapna means asleep. And Sushupti means deep in sleep. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond all these material stages of consciousness. It cannot be understood simply by our brain power. Persons who very analytically study this material world, they may come to the conclusion that everything is happening simply by chance. Asatyam apratishtam te jagat ahur anishvaram aparaspara sambhutam kinanyat kamahitukam. They come to the conclusion that there is no ultimate truth. There is no ultimate cause of all causes. There is no supreme controller in this world. Everything is simply happening by the random interaction of chemicals. Aparaspara sambhutam and kinanyat kamahitukam. What ultimate cause is there beyond material desire? So these demoniac philosophies, they may be developed in different ways, but they fail to answer the ultimate question. If we ask then, well, what is the purpose of life? They say there is no ultimate purpose. Same thing, Jaimini, next one mentioned is Jaimini, who was the propagator of Karanavangsha philosophy. Says that, anyway, whatever you do, you'll get some result. If you perform pious activities, then you'll get a good result. So, even if there is a God, He's forced to give you the result of your pious activities. So no need to worship God, just perform pious activities. And by performing pious activities, you will enjoy life. Then a completely different philosopher is Buddha, Buddha philosopher, who said that this world, it is simply miserable. Why try to enjoy it? Why try to understand it? Simply renounce it and become nothing. Their ultimate goal is to become nothing. So all these different philosophers, Bhakti Thakur says, they've come running to my rescue. So many different people come and tell you, this is my philosophy, this is my philosophy. Everyone is anxious to preach some philosophy because everyone thinks, I know what's the truth. Aap koi nija mate bhukti mukti jachit tatai nana vidafam. But Bhakti Thakur has seen through these bogus philosophers. They're simply propagating their own ideas. And if you see what is the underlying principle of all of them, it's either material enjoyment or liberation from this material world, which are different traps for the living beings. Because the real purpose of life is to surrender to Krishna. So all these philosophies, they may seem very interesting to us. And in the Western world, so many different philosophies have been developed also. Nothing very developed in the Western world. But still, it's for people of intellectual disposition, it's very interesting to study all these different philosophies. But that's simply studying different philosophies, that won't help us. Unless we come to the point of surrendering to Krishna, all these things, simply they'll keep us on the intellectual platform. So Bhakti Thakur says, Shoshabu Banchak, tuwa bhakti bahimuk, gathai visham parama. He says that actually all of these are simply cheaters, because they are inimical to the idea of devotion to you. Therefore, they're simply demonstrating a very visham parama. It's like their philosophy is simply a demonstration of a very complex and deep illusion. You see people, they become absorbed in some particular mode of thinking, and they become completely absorbed in that, and they think that this must be correct. And that the answer to everyone's problems is just to follow this philosophy. Just like in this country, some people, they became very much enamored of communist philosophy. And they thought we must spread communism. This is the real thing to solve all the problems. And they could only think in terms of communism. I know, I met so many communists in the Western countries.
Yeah,
what to speak in India. So their whole way of thinking is just influenced mostly by Marxist teachings. They analyze the news in the newspaper just like they have colored glasses. They're wearing colored glasses. And they always talk about the bourgeoisie and all this kind of thing. Of course, this word bourgeoisie was used by Marx to refer to a class of people which in the modern society don't exist. But they're so much absorbed in this philosophy that they can only see in terms of this way of thinking. But they don't consider that this philosophy is completely incomplete. Because even if everybody did get all the same facilities, even if everyone was equal, which is impossible anyway, it never happened in communist Russia nor anywhere else. Still, even if everyone was a very equal, happy communist, still we have to die. So the problem of death is not solved. And they may say, well, we're not concerned with that. But simply by their not being concerned with it, the problem is not solved. They say, we don't believe in life after death. But you believe or not believe, that doesn't affect the fact. If there is no life after death, then why are they struggling so hard to make a society which is nice if people just have to die in a few days anyway? Then life becomes completely meaningless. And why should you endeavor at all? You just live for a few days and then you die. And if there's nothing after death, then life is completely meaningless. That is the philosophy of the so-called existentialists, who said, well, after death everything is finished. So there's no meaning to life. So we might as well just die now. That was their philosophy. So the great propagator of existentialist philosophy, Kumar, he was a committed existentialist. And he used to say there's no use to discuss any philosophy. The only question is whether to kill myself now or not. So one day he was driving and he was driving along the cliff and he just decided to drive off the edge of the cliff and kill himself. Madman's philosophy. Anyway, they're all madmen. Because they're all avoiding the real point, that what is the essential nature of life? Some of them are thinking how to enjoy this material world, and others are thinking that this material world is not enjoyable, let us escape from it. But the really essential questions which open up the door to real understanding of life, they never even ask them. They never think to ask them because they are Krishna Bahimukh, they are inimical to God. If you go deeply into these questions, what is the purpose of life? Why is the world created? then you have to come to the point of understanding that there is God and our relationship with Him is as servant to master. But because they are very much inimical to such a concept of life, they don't ask such questions. They develop a very complex system of philosophy, but its very basis is superficial. Therefore, it's just like a kaleidoscope, which looks very complex and wonderful, but after all it's just a child's toy. It has no practical use whatsoever. So Bhakti Thakur says, Boimokka Vanchane Bhattasho Shabu Niramilla Vividya Pasha. He's saying that they're simply, all these philosophers, they're simply expert in making different kinds of discussions, which are meant for cheating those who are inimical to Krishna. Dandavata Durata Bhakati Vinod Bhelo Bhagata Charan Karisha. He says, I offer my obeisances to these philosophers from a distance. They are all great persons. We respectfully salute you from a long distance. You please be great, but without the blessings of God. But we don't associate with all these wrong ideas. We take the dust from the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. This is our philosophy. Shuddha Bhagata Charanavenu Bhajana Anukula. This is all these philosophers, their ideas, they are against devotion. And the dust from the lotus feet of devotees, that is favorable for devotion. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the greatest devotional scholar of the modern age. His language was so scholarly and difficult, frankly, no one could understand it except himself.
You think you ought?
His spiritual master was Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who from the external point of view was illiterate. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that all the truths of Vaishnava understanding are contained in one drop of dust from his lotus feet. So that is the fact that even though Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was illiterate, he had an acute understanding of all philosophical truth. So philosophy, that is essential for devotees. But philosophy is not simply talking. But philosophy means surrendering to Krishna. And all so-called philosophies which lead us away from Krishna, we are aware of their dangers. And knowing, understanding what they're saying and understanding that it's leading us on the wrong path, we reject it. So devotees should understand philosophy, what is correct philosophy, and not be misled by wrong ideas. Mostly in the modern world, people are not very philosophical. Modern education tends to make people very dull. Modern education is meant to make people like pawns. You know, pawn in the chess game? It's like pawns in a big economical system. They want people to go to the factories and bang. And if people have brains, they train them in technology, which that makes you very expert, maybe in adjusting electrical currents and making different machines. But it does not encourage introspective thoughtfulness about the meaning of life. So modern society is channeling everyone's intelligence simply into living with and making machines. Therefore, we don't find many people with developed philosophical intelligence. Therefore, we find people are misled by all kinds of ridiculous philosophies. Just like so many people ask us about this Japanese sect. I don't know exactly what their philosophy is, but by the result we can see that it's a pretty bogus thing. But then the people who ask us if we are the same as them, that means they're also foolish, because they don't take the trouble to see what we are teaching. They want to judge people just by looking at them. And we have so many books. People should study these books and see what deep philosophical understanding is there. Most people, they want something very shallow. We live in the age of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. You see, so much intelligence was required to make TVs. The intelligence is used to make a TV. They have all now very sophisticated TVs and satellite systems, so that you can see if there's a football game going on the other side of the world, you can see it live. So much intelligence, so much endeavor, so much human energy made so that you can watch different people on the other side of the world kicking a piece of leather ball around. So much intelligence so you can watch a Donald Duck cartoon. And people think it's very important if our country wins the football game. If we tell them, well, the purpose of life is to understand God, they say, I'm not very interested in this. I'm interested in football. So it means people are very dull. Manda sumanda mateo, no brain. And even if they have some faith in God, it's just simply based on some fanaticism or sentiment. As a social or familial identification. I was born in a Muslim family, therefore I'm a Muslim. Therefore, Islam is the best. Why? Because I'm a Muslim, and I'm the best, so Islam must be the best. And someone says, no, I'm Russian Orthodox. I was born in Russian Orthodox family, and I'm the most important person in the world, so therefore Russian Orthodox must be the best religion. No consideration. What are they teaching? What is anyone else teaching? What is the purpose of life? Simply go to the church or the mosque, God give me this, God give me this, God give me this. So in general, people are not very philosophical. We're trying to preach this scientific understanding of God. Scientific understanding means we should understand the facts as they are. In Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, knowledge of God is given in a very systematic manner. So we should try to understand that. Even many people come to Krishna consciousness and they accept it as another kind of sentiment. And without trying to understand deeply, they just take it as a kind of fashion. And they may dream up so many crazy ideas. That I am an incarnation of Mother Yashoda, I am a gopi, I saw Krishna in my dream dancing, I was dancing with him. So many funny ideas people have. When I chant Hare Krishna, I have visions. But when we ask them to do a simple thing like wash the floor for Krishna, then no time. So their so-called Krishna consciousness is simply another sentiment, imagination, hallucination, because they've never been serious enough to try to understand actually what this is. So in the Shastra, we have so much information. And our acharyas have also given us so much. Just like these songs of Bhakti Thakur, so much direction how we should approach God. So we should try to understand this. Of course, not everyone can become a very deep philosopher. But if one is not very much philosophically inclined, then he can at least chant Hare Krishna and engage seriously in the service of Krishna, under the guidance of those who do understand Krishna consciousness as it is. In this way their position will be safe. Otherwise they may be misled. There are many people willing to mislead us. Here the names of some have been mentioned. Kapil, Patanjali, Gautam, Kanad, Jaimini, different names have been mentioned. And there may not be such great personalities to mislead us. But there may be some cheater who imagines himself to be a guru in our local area, who speaks very confidently as if he knows everything about Krishna. But actually he's just another kind of cheater. Therefore, manchaka.
Yeah, obmanchik.
Manchaka.
Obmanchik.
Manchaka.
Obmanchik.
Manchaka.
Means cheater.
Manchak is Sanskrit. What is yours? Manchaka. Manchak. Pravancha. Big cheater. So, we should understand Krishna consciousness as it comes down properly in parampara. And that will, if we follow the parampara, then our path is very simple, straightforward and easy. Alright, so these few songs, 4 songs speaking about giving up all the obstacles on the path of devotion. So today I read the first of them, and tomorrow I'll read the second. So, Hare Krishna. Is there any question?
Sometimes we are, when we are criticized such kind of false philosophers, of non-sincere persons who behave improperly or sentimentally. Another peoples, they consider that it is simply our not appreciation or
yeah, I get the idea.
What can you say about
this is another bogus attitude. That you should just see be nice to everybody. Appreciate everybody. This is ridiculous. We should appreciate Stalin, Hitler, or this Japanese group, they're killing people. We should say, well, they also have their philosophy. We should also tolerate whatever they say. So you may say, well, these are very extreme examples. But any philosophy which doesn't lead us to Krishna consciousness, that is simply misleading. Pritibhite jaha kichu dharma nama chale. Pritibhite jaha kichu dharma nama chale. Bhagavata kahe kaya taha paripurana chale. Is all the religions in the world, so many things are going on in the name of religion, but they're all simply cheating. Just like Prabhupada always used to point out, people are saying, we are Christians. But then why don't they follow Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ said, thou shalt not kill. But they are, so-called Christians are expert in killing. So many slaughterhouses. So should we simply say that yes, this is very nice, that whatever you do is very nice? Or if people in the name of philosophy deny the personality of Godhead, should we accept that? The fact is that there is what is correct and there is what is incorrect. And the basic situation of this world is wrong. The basic situation of this world is birth, death, old age and disease, caused by enmity towards Krishna. So, as preachers, we should point this out. Because people are in darkness, they are ignorance. They are thinking everything is, whatever I'm doing is very nice. They need educating. As long as people do not inquire into the real situation of life, they're simply defeated in their struggle for material existence. So this idea we should agree with all different kinds of philosophies. Now that in itself is philosophical knowledge. Because if something is correct, then everything which deviates from that must be incorrect. Or if your philosophy is that no one should criticize any philosophy, then you shouldn't criticize my philosophy. My philosophy is that you're wrong. So now you keep quiet and accept it.
She's saying that why don't you say that when we criticize something, when we say something about, then it just means that you have your right to criticize? Or what?
No, personally we have no right. However, we have been told by our teachers to preach this message of Krishna. So, preaching the philosophy of Krishna consciousness means to differentiate and make a distinction. In English there's a saying to call a spade a spade.
What is spade?
Spade is the thing that you dig out of the ground. So our business is not simply to criticize for the sake of criticism. But if someone is a thief, to call him a thief is not offensive. People may think we're using a very harsh word. Why do you call him a thief? Because every night he goes to people's houses and steals. So, why do you call people rascals? Because they talk all big nice philosophies and then do all rascal things. So we should point these things out. But it's a fact also that those who are preaching, they have to lead a very pure life. If they themselves are rascals, then how can they teach others? The criticism of others, it's not meant for the point of hurting others, but it's meant for teaching, reformation. Just to give an example, someone may be walking on the edge of the mountain. He may be looking at the clouds and thinking, oh, what nice beautiful sky. Someone may see him and say, watch out, you're going to fall off the edge of the cliff. He says, and he may say, don't disturb me, I'm looking at the clouds. Then you have to shout, you fool, you rascal. He says, whoa, why is he calling me so many bad names? And he looks and sees, oh. So in the same way, people are spoiling their lives. People are wasting their valuable human life. Their human life is meant for understanding God. If we don't use this human life properly, then we have to again enter into the animal species. So we have to shout loudly to wake people up. Another example, if someone has a boil, then if you simply blow, that won't hurt the boil, but it won't help it either. The expert doctor has to bring a knife and cut it, which is very painful. But the effect is that the boil is cleaned and then he can live happily. So devotees, we're not actually interested in criticizing anybody. We're quite happy just to sit and chant Hare Krishna. Because our teachers have told us that you should teach and try to instruct others. Therefore we go into the world and speak this message of Krishna. We ask everybody to chant Hare Krishna, to take Krishna Prasad, food of Krishna. But if there's discussion on philosophy, we can also speak. Philosophical discussion means there must be some argument. But again, we're not interested in arguments simply for the sake of intellectual sport, but we are interested in establishing what is the actual fact. Is it not important to understand what is the ultimate truth? Should we not try to understand that? Should we simply pass our lives every day eating, every day sleeping? Should we not think what happens after death? Should we not try to perfect our lives? We must.
What does it mean to surrender to Krishna?
That we're discussing in this series of songs. That can be summarized when one engages in Krishna's service with no personal desire. That is surrender to Krishna. So that is what we are preaching. We are not preaching that you take religion as a kind of social etiquette. That you come once a week, pray to God, give me more money, solve my problems. But we are preaching complete immersion of the soul in love of God. Only that can satisfy us. Adding God to our material life will not satisfy us. If we simply think, I'll go on with my material life and add God. God's duty is to help me enjoy life more. That will not satisfy us. We can only be satisfied by giving ourselves to God.
As this driver did. He says, as this driver did, this canoe. He says, give canoe, he says.
No, he's a fool. He had no faith in God. Someone who commits suicide, they simply become a ghost. You can't attain God by suicide.
You is preaching this philosophy, this is very nice, but what is the life for you?
Yeah, philosophy is the basis. We have to understand philosophy first. And this particularly uncovering one aspect, and this is a whole series of songs. So I'm covering one aspect today. So when we understand this philosophy, then we can come to the lifestyle. Our lifestyle is hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, serving Krishna. But we should understand why to do that, because it requires some dedication. So if we understand that life is meant for understanding God and serving Him, then the next question comes, well, how to do that? So that is also not a very difficult thing. This begins with chanting the names of God, especially this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And in various ways, adding Krishna to our lives. In other words, whatever we're doing, we can do as a sacrifice to Krishna. Just like, for instance, everyone has to eat. But instead of simply cooking and eating for ourselves, we should cook, offer to Krishna, and then take the food. So that is a whole lifestyle based upon serving Krishna. The most important activities are chanting the names of Krishna, leading a very pure life. That means no gambling, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication. Associating with devotees. Just like people who are interested in drinking, they associate with other drunkards. They take pleasure in their company. So those who are devotees, they like to associate with other devotees. And together they serve Krishna. If you'd like to know more about that, I suggest you speak with some of the local devotees. How to adopt the ways of Krishna consciousness in our lives.
Sri Prabhupada was saying in his lectures that we should follow Nivriti Marga.
Nivriti Marga means the path of material enjoyment. Nivriti Marga means the path of giving up material enjoyment. Alright, so shall we chant some more?